This is a talk that I have been knowing about for a couple of weeks. And I would like to start off by saying that the reason why we are doing a podcast about games is, of course, very subjective when it comes to the reasons why other people are doing podcasts, because there are plenty of podcasts in this space. I will tell you that, but you probably already know. So let's begin. My name is Vesterberg Ringhög, pronouns he, him. I am 37 years old. I live in Stockholm with my partner and our 2 kids. And I actually didn't play that many video games in my early days. And it actually started when I started to work at, now let's see, there we go. I started to work at EB Games, 2007. And EB Games then got bought by GameStop. And the management culture arriving together with GameStop actually made me leave, and I started at NSA, which sounds a bit ridiculous, of course. But as you can see, maybe it's National Service Agency, a small Danish company who worked for and with some of the bigger publishers with video games and movies towards the Nordic regions retailers. So during my time at NSA, I listened to a lot of podcasts, long drives all across Sweden, launching events for Activision, Ubisoft, Rockstar, Bandai Namco, you name it, most of them. And during my years at NSA, I actually started to write about games myself at a small site called GameCore. And when they decided to put it down, I started to write for IGN. And after that, I started to produce my first podcast called Mamma Pappa Spel, which is a podcast that me and 3 other parents did to provide some form of light to the perspectives of parenting around video games, as well as play with your kids and other perspectives around digital media. And after that, we launched TV-spelspodden, which is basically the same people that is now behind Öppna Världar. And during these years, I also wrote for Loading, another Swedish site, which later became the New Loading. And then at the end of 2019, preparing for the worst of what years to come in 2020, we all dropped out of writing and podcasting for some time, just to arrive in 2019, where we started the podcast Öppna Världar. And I will try to tell you why we have decided to do a podcast about games. Me and a couple of friends. So there could be many reasons of why one would start a podcast about games. There could be small reasons, big reasons, whatever reasons, and so forth. A lot of them is, of course, because it's fun to start a podcast about games, which comes naturally, because if it's not fun, well, why do it at all if you're not getting paid, at least? Or we do it so we can discuss popular culture together with friends, also a possibility. So we can get free games. It's actually something that I've learned that many people either write or podcast, mainly because since there is really not that much of a payout, everybody's doing this for free. So the games could be the main reason for some people to do a podcast about games. Others do it so they can get free games before everybody else, which is a little bit more maybe aggressive, or so they can get free games before everybody else, except we don't feel like writing reviews because it takes too much time. So that is also a bit cynical, perhaps, but still could be true. So we can get famous. And I'm not sure if starting a podcast about games is the way to get famous in 2020 or 2021 or 2019 for that matter. But yeah, We want to evolve as critics. It's a good reason, of course, to learn to articulate your critique and analysis. Or actually, we just want to talk shit without really having to put in any effort and see if something happens. Because if we can do that for a living, then that would be pretty cool, right? So that could be a part of it as well for some, I guess. Or we just don't know. Somebody suggested it, and here we are. So there are plenty of reasons, of course. One of the reasons, or a couple of the reasons, of course, is true for us as well. We think it's fun, and we want to discuss popular culture among friends. And of course, we want to evolve as critics. That is pretty clear. But there are certain things that we want to do differently, or we wanted to do differently at the time we started the podcast Up Nevada. So I want to ask another question. Why do a podcast at all? And this is, bear with me here. I'm just going to let it speak for itself. So I saw this sort of meme. I have made this one myself. I saw this exchange on Twitter, and I loved it. If you're only listening to this, of course, there's a little child, I should say, who is talking to their mom. And they are asking, "Mom, what is a podcast?" And the mom is answering, okay. Listen, hun, when men really like their opinions, ... So we feel that, of course, there are a lot of gaming podcasts in this space where there are a couple of guys discussing video games from their perspectives because they think it's fun or because whatever reason they have. So what we felt was that we wanted to try to do something that not was just guys, of course. We wanted to be better at representation. We wanted to have more women and non-binary in our panel, and we wanted to do this and put out perspectives of games and people that we don't feel are that representative in the space that we are operating within. And when I say we, it all started with actually a couple of guys, me and Jesper. So I guess that's on us. But still, what happened later was that we gathered a group of friends, and we came to the conclusion that this could be something worthwhile. So what is the main reasons for us to do a podcast about games? We want to make a change. We want to be part of the change, at least. And this is a pretty... I believe this is a pretty unusual thing to say for people who make a podcast, because a lot of the people that I've spoken to during my years that either writes or are making podcasts, they're mainly doing it for self-development, for the analysis, because they like to analyze and critique the culture that they're in love with and so forth. But I don't hear a lot of people say that they really want to make a change. So I think that this could be a little bit different, maybe. Not unique, of course, but maybe a little bit different. We want more diversity. We want better representation, new perspectives, and most of all, a more inclusive culture and industry overall. And, of course, we want to talk about games and other popular culture from our perspectives with angles that we believe are rare in the space we are operating within. So this is distilled down the main reasons why I think that we are doing a podcast about games. One should remember that video games is the biggest entertainment industry and medium in the world. And by not lifting and by not pushing for better diversity, a more inclusive culture and better representation and better working rights or what have you, then you're not really helping the medium or the industry forward. You're actually maybe just losing or letting go of the brakes, because sometimes we need to take a break and discuss what is actually going on within the culture, within the games, within the medium. And that summons it why we do a podcast about games, I think. And how do you do our podcast about games then? Well, we have to reduce the barriers and make it easy for everybody. The thing about a podcast is all you actually need is a microphone, headphones, and internet. And the good thing about podcasting is that you don't need skills to write. You don't need to push those types of deadlines. You are working with deadlines, of course, when we get certain types of games under embargoes and such. And if we want to hit that embargo, of course, we have a deadline. But most of the time, we try to do it in other ways. Make a platform, create a safe space, and push voices and perspectives that usually doesn't get that much attention, which is very important. A lot of people from marginalized groups, of course, are used to get that much attention or are used to getting pushed. So what we want to do is try to push each other and help each other to create that space at the best as we can, of course. And we want to invite people of different backgrounds from the culture and industry and let them tell their stories. This thing about inviting guests is, of course, not only about equality and representation, but also in the space of the medium itself. And we want to bring our listeners and our followers these types of stories because we think that the more people that learn about these stories, the more people that learn about these perspectives, the broader and richer the medium and culture and industry becomes. And the most important thing, we have to only do this if, when, and how it works for everybody. Life comes first. We don't have any patrons. We don't have any income on this. This is totally from our own pockets. And each of us have their own jobs and own lives and own families besides this. So always life comes first. And of course, this comes with challenges. And those challenges has to be accepted. Learn that it will take time before everyone feels free to talk about exactly whatever they feel like, when they feel like it. So, as I told before, as a man, I usually feel that I have the space to talk about what I like. But if you come from a marginalized group into a medium, a discussion, or a culture where you actually don't have that safe space, then you might maybe not feel like that you can talk about whatever you want and however you want. And to get there, we have to accept that things will take time for everybody of us. And it will be hard to reach out to more listeners of different backgrounds and genders to spread the voices and perspectives we believe can bring more power and positivity to the medium and the culture, because we are a, as you say, niche product. We are very focused on why we do what we do, and we will always think an extra time before we invite certain guests, of course. We will always be prepared to go the extra mile if it means that we can discuss topics that are maybe sensitive, or if we are maybe able to discuss topics that are old and not as relevant today as they once were, only because we want to lift our perspectives, only because we want to lift the voices that we feel are not as heard. And this is also a challenge, of course, which is a note to myself and probably other men to shut up and learn to listen. As you can remember, men, of course, like their opinions, and probably, I mean, this is not excluding women and non-binaries. Everybody loves their opinions, of course. But as a man in this space, one have to accept the challenge to just listen and let everybody else maybe take the space. And I am proud to say that both Douglas and Jesper in our podcast are very good listeners. So this could be maybe a actual note to self. Yeah. But anyway, these are the challenges that we have to work with. So we have some highlights, of course, and I am not going to go through all of them. But from the very start, when we discussed why we wanted to do this podcast about games, of course, we wanted that Lisa and Lily could spread their knowledge about esports and Apex Legends, as they did thoroughly in our latest episode. And of course, we wanted that Sarah and Jules can give us their special on Xena, the Warrior Princess, a long and hefty analysis of the classical series. Of course, we want Ida to tell you about her first meeting with a roguelite when reviewing one of the most anticipated games in the first half of 2021. I'm talking about the PlayStation 5 exclusive Returnal. And I was extremely thankful to, together with Douglas, get to be the first in Sweden to release our full impressions of the small indie darling Maquette. And also, so Jesper can release his solo piece about male intimacy in games, which is a rare occurrence in this space. And of course, so we can invite guests to tell their stories, which we have plenty of. So just to sum it up, we are doing this podcast to make a change for more diversity, better representation, new perspectives, and most of all, a more inclusive culture and industry overall. And we do a podcast about games because we want to talk about games from our perspectives with angles that we believe are rare in the space we are operating within. So this is why we do a podcast about games. And Öppna Världar contains of me, Douglas, Ida, Jules, Jesper, Lily, Lisa, and Sarah. And you will find us at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, of course, YouTube as well, but we don't have a nice URL there, so I really don't bother. But Twitch is the place to be if you want to watch our streams and so forth. And you can find our podcast at all the podcast hosts, almost. So I guess that's that.
Thank you so much, Aron. This was really great. I have a question for you, if that's okay.
Yes.
What have been like the biggest challenge with having a podcast that you run, keep it running? Is it hard to find new topics and stuff like that?
No, no. The challenge for me personally have never been to find new topics because I am, as I tried to hint, I need to learn to shut up more than I need to find topics. I can probably speak for hours on end. So my biggest challenge personally have been to listen more and speak less. That is very concrete and very honest. But the other challenge, of course, is to uphold a certain structure in this. We do it when and if and how we can. Because without structure, of course, there is also hard to maintain a steady flow of episodes. And if you're not having a steady flow of episodes, then you're not having a steady flow of discussions. And if you're gone away from a friend that you used to talk to for quite a while, then you start to lose grasp of what that context usually sounds like, or how those talks usually flows like. So the chemistry needs there to be some sort of I'm not finding the word here. Continuitet.
Continuity.
Continuity. Thanks, Sarah. This is true. So while we have said that we do this if and when and how we can, because lives comes first. There is a bit of a challenge trying to uphold a steady flow of episodes and talks, of course. So yeah, that could be that.
Yeah. How often do you release an episode? Is it weekly or once a month or more randomly?
I mean, the thing is that we have 131 episodes released, and we have been around for a little bit over 2 years. So I would say if you count it backwards, at least once a week. But it could also be 2 weeks without any episodes, or 3 weeks, and then 2 or 3 episodes a week. So it's very spontaneous, but you should be able to measure it down to once a week at least.
Super. Thank you so much. So everyone, go and check out Öppna världar. Thank you so much, Aron. And thank you everyone else who's been here. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.